Hello, welcome to the series of videos where I just look at tennis games. That's pretty much it. I am going to provide a play-by-play analysis of what happens, why it happened, and how maybe you could improve on situations that have happened in these games. Today I'm going to be looking at Rob4thawin versus Saint TV. Now, I think it is important to know what level this game is at, and as such I am going to show you a sheet here that shows you the levels that I consider players to be at in the game at the moment. I think that there's a novice tier, an okay tier, a good tier, an advanced tier, an expert tier, and a master tier. I have never met a master at tennis. I don't think that anyone's put enough hours in the game to completely master it, but I have met an expert. I consider Dashialwia, the YouTuber, to be an expert at tennis, and I think that Saint is at the advanced level. As you can see on the sheet, being at the advanced level means that he is advanced. He's able to basically beat most tennis players that he will encounter, and I think that this game will help a lot of people understand what they might be missing in the games, what they can improve on, and hopefully allow people to do so. For the sake of clarity, I am going to clarify that Saint is the one recording this video and he is the one on the right. He does talk, and I might use some of his voice lines to explain his thought process, if applicable. I might also not. It all just depends on whether it's applicable or not. Anyway, Saint's on the right, Rob is on the left, and that includes for the scores, and also you can see the scores on the top left where Rob4thawin is at the top with 0 points and Saint TV is at the bottom with 0 points. So without further ado, let's get into the analysis. So the game starts with Rob4thawin serving the ball, and then Saint returns with a forehand all the way to the edge of Rob4thawin's side, which is pretty standard. Rob4thawin responds with a full-powered forehand to about Saint's middle. Saint returns with a full-powered lob at the edge of his side, and Rob4thawin interrupts that with a spike. Saint shows immaculate defense and does not let that through with a lob to Rob4thawin's short, to which he responds with a low-powered lob. Saint returns with a mid-powered forehand to about Rob4thawin's middle, and Rob4thawin actually cancels the forehand and returns with a low-powered lob to Saint's short. Saint returns a 75% power forehand to Rob4thawin's middle. Again, Rob4thawin cancels the forehand and goes for a low-powered short. It seems Saint thought he could spike and throws the ball out of the court. So point one was a little hefty, and I do realize that, but that is what high-level play at tennis looks like. There were a lot of strategies that were used, and there were a lot of techs that were used, and I'll explain those now. So starting from the very beginning, what you see on screen right now is the very first move of the very first point. Now the first thing I want to analyze is that there are basically two bars, one for Rob4thawin and one for Saint. Rob4thawin's is empty and Saint's is about 75% full. What that means is that Saint is currently charging up for a shot. And at this point in time, that is something that Rob4thawin is noticing. At this level of play, you should be watching what your opponent's bar is doing. As you saw there, the bar fills up really fast. Both Rob4thawin's bar and Saint's bar filled up in no time at all, which essentially allows you to react faster. As such, I would actually consider what Rob4thawin is doing with preparing his attack unnecessary, and even potentially dangerous if you don't have a tech that I'll talk about later. Moving away from that tangent, there's basically three things that Saint could do at this point in time. The first and most obvious thing for him to do is just to let go and shoot the ball. And that's exactly what ended up happening in the game. He shot the ball right around here, and it took a little bit for the game to realize that he actually shot the ball, but it eventually did, and he made it inbounds because he was fighting against the momentum of the previous forehand.
No, I was.
As you can see, that just barely made it in, but let's go back. What happens if you chose option 2 or option 3? Option 2 is extremely simple. It's just to wait. This gives you control. It lets you figure out where the ball is going to hit the ground on your opponent's side. It could be short, middle, or long, but not only that, it also allows you to control the tempo of the game. Most people, when they are trying to keep the game simple and not overcomplicate it, will hit the ball when it touches the ground. And that means that you can control when they hit the ball if you control when it hits the ground. Obviously, this never happened in this point in the game, but it does happen eventually, and I will point it out when I see it. Ultimately, that leaves us with option 3, which is to do what I like to call an input cancel. In order to perform an input cancel, you just click the other button that you're not pressing while you're holding to do a shot. For example, if you are holding down left click to do a forehand, and you want to cancel, you would just press right click, and that would instantly cancel the input, and then you could go for a lob instead. Honestly speaking, any one of these three options has their place in any tennis game. It just has different reasons behind each of them. I know that I said option 2 gives you the control over the timing, and that's true, but option 1 also gives your opponent the illusion of control. If you can make your opponent fall into a false rhythm, then you can instantaneously ruin that rhythm, and therefore ruin your opponent's plans.
I was.
Going back to here, Rob4thawin has already chosen option 1, which was to hit the ball when it touched the ground. One of the reasons that I can think that Rob4thawin might have done that is that it was just a hard read. And because of that, he didn't want to accidentally save Saint from hitting it over. Again, Saint at this point has a couple choices. I think it's only 2 this time, though. I think he could not do an input cancel in time, which ultimately means that he only has the choice to wait until it gets to the very edge of a space or hit it right as it touches the ground. Here you can see that he chose to hit the ball right as it touched the ground. Now you could tell that there was a little bit of input lag there, but ultimately he did choose to hit the ball right as it hit the ground. I honestly think that this might have just been an unconscious decision. It is possible that he was just going with the flow, which could be good and it could be bad, depending on the situation.
He's gonna spike it?
What you just heard was actually one of the reasons why I think Saint is an advanced player. He not only is looking at the bar of his opponent, but also anticipating what his plan might be. Here, again, Saint has pretty much been stripped from choice. He only has the option to hit the ball as soon as he possibly can, or he will either hit it too slow and it won't go over the net, or he just won't hit it in time. As you can see, like I said, Saint exhibits immense defense skills there by just defending against a spike, which is hard in and of itself. I think the act of actively defending against a spike relies heavily on your reflexes, but Saint completely bypassed that by just guessing that Rob4thawin was going to throw a spike.
Yes, but I can return it.
Here is actually another critical moment where a lot of players fail. What Rob4thawin just did is do a low-powered shot to Saint's short. A lot of the novice players, when this happens, they can't really do anything because they rely entirely on preparing for attacks. They will just go full power on every attack that they do, which works most of the time, but when it lands on their short, then they will hit it over 100% of the time. Knowing that, right here we can see that Saint essentially has 2 different choices. I think Saint's number 1 choice is to hit the ball right there at low power with just a lob or a forehand. I think there is another choice, though. I think that you can go for about a half-power forehand here and get it to Rob4thawin's far side. The reason I say this is not only is a half-power forehand at point-blank range kind of hard to react to, but also you can see Rob4thawin's bar. He is low on stamina. If you manage to make it all the way to his far side, he will not be able to make it over. If you do employ this, then the only real strategy for Rob4thawin is to react fast enough while the ball is still close to the net and he can still hit it over. Obviously, neither strategy is foolproof. Both strategies have their counterparts, but both strategies are unique and choices that you can make to keep your opponent on the back foot. At this point, we can see that Rob4thawin has loaded up a forehand. He was most likely expecting a higher lob that he could have spiked again. And what you just saw Rob4thawin do was an input cancel. What Rob4thawin effectively accomplished was canceling a forehand and turning it into a lob. Going back to the choices, we see that he chose the 3rd option. And what this effectively does is if anyone is paying close enough attention to his bar, they will think that he might be going for a forehand or a spike when in reality he's going for a low lob.
Oh yeah, we're on equal footing now.
So Saint chose to go for a short lob, which is smart because you can see that Rob4thawin's bar is at full. You can tell that Rob4thawin is expecting a spike, and he's not going to get one. Even knowing that Rob4thawin has the ability to input cancel, it is still smart to do this, because even if Rob4thawin does input cancel, it still goes against his plans. In this game, the less you allow someone to have their plan, the more you force them to react.
I can hit it now.
Another thing is that Rob4thawin only had a number of choices in that situation. The more you can restrict the agency of your opponent, the more you can guess what they're going to do. In this case, Rob4thawin was left with basically 2 options. He could either do a short lob or a long forehand. I think at this point, Saint was probably trying to do a form of input canceling. He probably did not want to actually do a long forehand. He probably wanted to switch to a lob.
No!
I think that for the purposes of this series, I will only analyze 1 point as in-depthly as this. Although, I do hope that this in-depth point analysis has shown you what I am thinking when I see people play games. I question why they are doing what they are doing, and why I am doing what I am doing. One thing that is interesting to note is that you will see that Rob4thawin actually executes a spike here, even though the ball is headed downwards. Normally, I think it is the case that a spike can only be done when the ball is going up or at the top of its path. However, it is possible that in this case, the network lag made it look like it was going down.
I need to stop doing that, bro. What am I doing? Bro!
Here, it is possible that Saint thought that Rob4thawin was going to go for a super serve, but I'm not 100% sure. So here, Rob4thawin did a super serve. A super serve is essentially a spike, but just for specifically when you are doing a serve. There are two main differences between spikes and super serves. One is the sound that it made. They both sound slightly different from a normal forehand, but the spike sounds a little bit less unique. The other main difference between a spike and a super serve is that a super serve's activation conditions are a lot harder to meet than a spike's. Essentially, for a super serve, you have to hit it at the very, very top of its upward path. Nowhere else. It's not frame perfect, but it's not easy. This is another unfortunate byproduct of lag. The ball did not have enough power to go over the net because the lag didn't allow his input to be registered until the ball was already basically out of the court. I'll actually slow it down so that you can get a better look. Anyway, back to the game now. If you think that serve looks weird, good job. You're learning. That was actually an input cancel. Literally seconds after Rob4thawin finished the input cancel on the forehand, he did a extremely low power lob or forehand. It doesn't really matter.
Oh.
I think that was Rob4thawin trying one of the strategies. One thing that you can do is make the ball drop basically vertically on top of the net, and it looks like it phases through the net, and it's really hard to defend against because the other person on the other side, if they go too fast, they'll hit their own net.
Spike! That doesn't even count as a spike, bro. No way, bro. Nah. Yes! Spike! No! 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 Yeah! Oh, no!
This is actually something that I've seen a lot of people do. I think it's more likely to happen when no one's expecting their opponent to miss.
I sent it back! No!
It is hard to tell, but I do think that this ball might have went over because the horizontal speed going left towards Rob4thawin was not enough to counteract the speed of a full power forehand.
Oh! Comeback season? Come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on. I knew it! I knew it! I saw it coming! I saw that coming!
I think for now that is going to be all for this video. I think for future videos I am going to do 3 separate chapters. I'll do the intro, and then I'll do the commentary, which will just be like what I did for the first point on this video, and then I'll do like an in-depth point analysis on anything that I find interesting. Maybe I'll also do an in-depth point analysis on the first point as well in the other videos, just so that anybody who's new is up to speed with whatever's happening. But other than that, I think hopefully every video should be pretty self-contained, and that's one of the things that I want to do. This is a new series, so I just gotta try to get it right. And I hope people will learn from this. Goodbye.